Just who is Jeff Ament, the man playing the low-volume bass? A man whose name is seldom in the news, whose face is frequently obscured by the spotlight on stage, and who never felt the need to raise his voice to be heard. Still, Pearl Jam couldn't have weathered any storm without his deep, cold, and purposeful bass tones. And nobody can afford to ignore that. Kurt Cobain, Eddie Vedder, and songs that tore at the soul are what people think of when they hear grunge as a cry of revolt from Seattle. However, not many people know that Jeff Ament laid down a strong, ponderous, unshakable musical foundation underlying their cries. Created from the ashes of a childhood spent struggling on Montana's prairies. There, he mastered the art of being silent while still making his voice heard, as well as rebelling without resorting to violence. He remained a member of the band for all 30 years of its existence, playing low, resonant notes through every scandal and drama that arose. Jeff Ament was the one who shone brightest in the shadows. He never wanted the limelight for himself. From a small hamlet of a few hundred people to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, his undying dedication to music, to himself, and to things never meant to be displayed. That was his early existence. Jeff Ament came into this world on March 10, 1963, in the little town of Havre, Montana, a parched and lonely spot tucked away in the vast prairies close to the Canadian border. He came from a long line of hardworking German immigrants. The farmer was his grandpa. George Ament was a severe, laconic, very conventional guy who worked for the Great Northern Railway. Penny Ament was a strong, industrious lady who managed the household in a small, cramped dwelling. Of his 12 siblings, Jeff was the firstborn. Expectations, pressure, and an enduring sense of isolation were all part of that role. Big Sandy was home to the family. It was a tiny town with a handful of 100 residents, a single main street, a single church, a single high school, and seemingly endless open space. Working hard, being quiet and persistent, and never complaining were the rules of life there. Jeff would help his dad out around the house first thing in the morning, whether it was mowing the lawn, shoveling snow, fixing pipes, or even learning how to use a hammer before he understood his multiplication tables. As a result of his father's physical and emotional abuse, he developed a strong need for autonomy, a reserved personality, and an innate unwillingness to trust others. Jeff resorted to art as a means of evading the overwhelming amount of children and the lack of personal space in his home. The process began with sketching. Hours would pass while he meticulously sketched record covers or reproduced magazine photographs of his beloved bands. Music followed. He entered a new world filled with The Clash, Ramones, Talking Heads, and the Cops through an old radio, a few cassette tapes, and late-night broadcast shows. The boy's upbringing in seclusion and punishment resonated with those harsh, rebellious noises. His artistic aspirations were not encouraged by anyone in his family. Even though Jeff wanted to be a musician, his dad was against it. The town muttered when he began sporting long hair and punk-style clothing. His classmates treated him as though he didn't belong. However, rather than giving up, Jeff chose to remain silent and continued practicing, creating a little universe for himself where he could be himself without seeking approval. In addition to his musical talents, Jeff contributed much to Big Sandy High School's basketball success as a towering, swift, and technically gifted player. His father was most proud of him when he played basketball. He wasn't playing for the win, though, and Jeff knew it. He started his art studies at Missoula's University of Montana in 1981. However, he decided he'd had enough after a few years and transferred to Seattle. A bass guitar, some rudimentary demos, and the peaceful conviction that beyond the low, steady tones lay another existence awaited him. These were the things he carried with him. Starting out in one's profession, there wasn't exactly a veritable paradise of music in Seattle in the early 1980s. Wet and chilly, the city had yet to be clearly identified on the rock map. In the limbo between post-punk and pre-alternative, local bands were fumbling to find their sound. But it was there that Jeff Ament finally felt like he belonged. When Jeff dropped out of Missoula State University in 1983, he packed up his bass and some unfinished demos and headed for Seattle. In order to make ends meet, he did odd jobs including waiting tables, loading trucks, and posing for street vendors. However, when the sun went down, he rushed headfirst into overcrowded garages where punk music, raw energy, and the desire for authenticity pulsed. Not long after, he became a member of Deranged Diction, his first hardcore punk band, and they began performing in local venues with up-and-coming acts like Soundgarden and The Accused. Meeting Stone Gossard, a guitarist and fellow punk and classic rock aficionado, was a turning point for Jeff. In 1984, they were both members of Green River, a band widely acknowledged as the pioneering force behind grunge. Green River combined raw punk with sludge-heavy riffs influenced by Black Sabbath, along with Mark Arm and Alex Vincent, who would later create Mudhoney. The result was music that was dark, heavy, and irresistible. Not showy, but emotionally charged. Jeff's bass playing was memorable, vast and open. His distinctive style would emerge from this. Green River created a ruckus in Seattle's underground culture, but it never charted commercially. However, disagreements about direction led to the band's rapid dissolution. Mark Arm was for staying true to lo-fi punk, but Ament and Ghostard wanted to sign with major labels and release more albums. This was more than a debate about music. Something more fundamental about Jeff's personality was exposed. Despite his reserved demeanor, he is unwavering in his commitment to causes he believes in. Jeff, Gossard, and Andrew Wood, the show-stopping frontman, joined Mother Love Bone after Green River broke up in 1987. Jeff finally felt like he belonged to a band that could compete on a serious level. With a music that fused glam rock, funk, and grunge, they created an infectious, alluring, and commercially promising sound. No longer was Jeff merely the bassist. Posters, record art, and production were all created by him, and he played a significant role in shaping the band's sound and appearance. They were ready to release Apple, their debut album, in early 1990 after finishing it in 1989. Tragically, though, that happened only days before the record was released. The heroin overdose death of Andrew Wood crushed not only Jeff's optimism, but also his faith in the road he had forged forward. After Mother Love Bone broke up, Apple became a memorial album. Just as Jeff Ament thought he had everything under control, he descended into a severe crisis and lost everything again. To fill that loss, he was enticed back into the studio by his longtime buddy Chris Cornell to record Temple of the Dog, a tribute effort to Andrew. In that very place, Jeff first laid eyes on Eddie Vedder, an unassuming newbie from California. He entered the studio clutching a handful of handwritten lyrics and stunned everyone with his audible entrance. A new era in rock history was about to commence from those ashes, which none of them could have predicted at the time. Achieving professional success. Nobody joined Pearl Jam with the intention of becoming a legend. Following the tragic death of Andrew Wood, all they wanted to do was support one another. However, within those ruins, Jeff Ament along with Stone Gossard, Mike McCready, Eddie Vedder, and Dave Cruzan formed an unprecedented band known as Pearl Jam. Their debut album, 1991's 10, would later be hailed as one of the most influential rock albums of all time. Jeff demonstrated early on that he could do more than play bass. More crucially, he grasped the power of quiet in music. He was the one who constructed the framework, made the recordings, came up with the band's name, and molded Pearl Jam's visual identity, from album covers and tour posters to t-shirt designs. Despite grunge's reputation for anarchy and fury, Jeff Ament's bass lines took on a purposeful emptiness, resonating with an unnamed calm sadness. Inspired by a real-life suicide, he was the primary songwriter for the eerie song Jeremy, which tells the story of a bullied and secluded schoolboy. Not only did it propel Pearl Jam to #1 on the Billboard charts, but it also provided Jeff with an outlet for the pent-up feelings he had as a child, when he felt like he didn't belong anywhere. Jeff also found outlets for his innermost thoughts and feelings in instrumental pieces such as Pilot, Nothing As It Seems, Low Light, and Nothing Man. Despite Pearl Jam's meteoric rise to popularity after the number 10, Jeff refused to be consumed by the fame machine. Jeff was a fervent supporter of the band's decision to forego corporate-style promotional tours, award presentations, and music videos. He and Gossard were witnesses in the ongoing legal dispute between Ticketmaster and the company over allegations of price gouging and market dominance. Legislative body. Jeff was brief in his remarks, but they were strong in substance and easy to understand. Pearl Jam remained resilient over their 3-decade career. Downfall in commercial relevance, personal setbacks, lineup changes, and internal strife. Jeff Ament, on the other hand, was a constant member of the band who never quit, gave in, or stopped participating. In the background, he maintained silence. He maintained tempo and spirit on stage and in the music he created. Outside of Pearl Jam, Jeff worked on a number of solo projects that were more experimental. Doug Pinnick of King's X, Three Fish, an R&M album fusing rock and world music, a joint effort with Joseph Arthur Trace Metz, and 3 solo efforts. Tone, 2008, Heaven Hell, 2018, and While My Heart Beats, 2012, where he performed on the majority of the instruments himself. Each had its own unique character, occasionally offbeat, occasionally so serene as to be contemplative, but consistently displaying one unwavering feature: deepness, not popularity, was the driving force behind Jeff Ament's music. During Pearl Jam's 2017 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, Jeff wore a t-shirt that included the names of numerous indie bands that he had once adored, a quiet nod of gratitude to the underground culture that had an impact on his soul. Jeff Ament's name was irrelevant. It pertained to the unidentified speakers from those late-night radio shows he had experienced as a child. The true rationale for his position. Jeff Ament never viewed fame as a measure of success. This was the subject. Whatever it was about music that first captivated him, he never betrayed. Difficulties and problems. When Jeff Ament is hurting, he doesn't let anyone else feel it. He has always kept his private life private, never written a memoir, and has never made an issue of public grievances into a publicity stunt. Despite this, he has persevered musically despite adversity by maintaining composure, self-control, and a quiet faith in doing the right thing, even when he has encountered challenges that would have broken anyone. Mother Love Bone's lead singer Andrew Wood's unexpected death from a heroin overdose in March 1990 was the initial blow that devastated Jeff Ament. After Green River broke up, Jeff and Andrew were more than simply bandmates. They became great friends who helped each other rebuild hope. With the completion of their debut album, Apple, as well as the signing of contracts and the scheduling of a tour, the band appeared poised to become the next great thing to come out of Seattle. However, Andrew passed away a few days prior to the album's release. The band and Jeff were both devastated by the catastrophe. Emotional paralysis overcame him. Reminiscent of his youth, he opted to remain silent. There were no public statements or attempts to explain the loss. He acted solely in one way. He started to write music and withdraw from the world. While this was happening, Jeff was a part of Temple of the Dog, a project dedicated to Andrew that featured Chris Cornell, Gossard, McCready, Matt Cameron, and Eddie Vedder. In that same studio where he discovered Pearl Jam, Jeff played bass on the most heartfelt farewell song he had ever played, Say Hello to Heaven. Despite Pearl Jam's current status as one of the most iconic bands of the contemporary era, the band did have its share of internal conflicts, most notably between guitarist Jeff and Eddie Vedder, who couldn't have been more different. Jeff was meticulous and artistically inclined, with a penchant for experimenting with visuals, videos, and album art. Vedder, in contrast, was quiet, strongly opposed to advertising, and unwaveringly private. Jeff was the lone member of Pearl Jam who wasn't totally on board with the decision to cease creating music videos after 10. He thought that powerful images might enhance, rather than dilute, the message of music, and hence placed a premium on visual narrative. His creative differences with Vedder sprang from that one point of disagreement. Jeff and Vedder's relationship has always maintained an unsaid distance, even if it never resulted in a separation. Strange as it may seem, Pearl Jam's unique sound was actually what held the band together. Jeff makes up the center, while Vedder acts as the shield. One maintains the group's course. In this way, one prevents it from becoming choked. 3 armed robbers assaulted Jeff as he stepped out of an SUV on April 27, 2009, as he was getting ready to record at Atlanta's Southern Tracks recording studio. They broke the windows, held him and his assistant captive, and made off with his phone, laptop, and other valuables, worth more than $3,000, in their theft. Despite escaping injury physically, Jeff subsequently ranked it among the most harrowing experiences of his life. But Jeff chose to remain silent rather than give interviews. He refrained from using the situation to garner attention. Instead of using social media to impart wisdom, he chose to keep quiet. He went back to the studio and completed the album. Quiet continuing, no public demands, and no complaints. Jeff Ament has been quite lonely while following the seemingly secure route of a life devoid of scandal and commotion. Rather than compete for attention, he prefers to remain in the background in the music industry, oftentimes disregarded and forgotten. When Pearl Jam is brought up, Jeff Ament's name is usually mentioned last, if at all. There is no rosy portrayal of his life story, no stunning remarks, and no redemption arc based on his addiction. However, if you pay close attention to the bass in either Nothing As It Seems or Low Light, you will hear all of his wounds, endurance, and unspoken words. They're all in one place. Regarding his private life, Jeff Ament's romantic relationships are not scandalous. Nobody gets married in front of the public, has famous children, has a love story that the media can use, has showy interests, or says anything that gets people talking. Like the bass he plays, his private life is profoundly subtle and unusually silent. The inner world is complicated, multi-layered, and incredibly compassionate beneath that placid exterior. That Jeff has decided to keep hidden in order to preserve it. Instead of relocating to the glitter of New York or Los Angeles, like many of his contemporaries, Jeff went back to Montana, his birthplace, to live a life away from the limelight. Far from the bright lights of the entertainment business and the din of everyday life, he lives in a house by the woods, where he is alone with nature, his thoughts, and the elements. "You need space," he said once. "In this world when everyone is vying for survival, I feel I can't be authentic." A getaway from the city wasn't all it was. It was an ideology. Silence is essential for the growth of music. Jeff has cherished his bond with his younger brother Barry Ament, who has been his creative collaborator at the Ames Brevore's graphic design studio for many years. They have made countless tour posters as a team, pieces of visual art for Pearl Jam and other prominent artists' albums. Not only does Jeff perform music, but he also creates, designs, and comes up with ideas. Plus, he discovered an unabashedly helpful partner in Barry. The brothers' albums Lightning Bolt, 2015, and the Chris Cornell Retrospective, 2020, both took home Grammys for Best Recording Package. To Jeff, though, the true payoff is more straightforward. "Every day, I get to collaborate with my brother for the sake of art rather than fame." Jeff Ament has a modest but steadfast passion for creating free skate parks for teens in underprivileged areas, particularly on Native American reservations, and for music and design in general. He has personally contributed to the construction of more than 25 skate parks around Montana through the Jeff Ament Skate Park Fund, from unidentified rural areas to distant indigenous homelands. Oftentimes, these areas lack the resources necessary to provide adequate entertainment options for children, such as playgrounds and movie theaters. However, Jeff turns up. Together, he listens and constructs. Additionally, he keeps up his basketball playing, not for the sake of competitiveness, but rather to relive his youth. "I would have fallen apart a long time ago," he once said, in reference to his reliance on basketball and baseball. No spouse or partner has ever been officially acknowledged by Jeff. He never once brings up his romantic life in an interview. His friends and family claim he's been in a committed relationship for some time, but he's just as careful to keep his partner out of the spotlight as he is with himself. The fact that he loves is irrelevant. The way he loves is so understated, like a bass player. No show, no proclamation, just a steady beat that keeps everything else alive. While Jeff Ament does not engage in preaching, he exemplifies this principle through his entire life. If you want to be successful, make a difference, and live an honorable life, you don't need to shout to be heard.